Hi, hello. Welcome to the sew along for the Paper Theory Ray Pinafore dress. Today I am going to follow the instructions that came with the pattern, and I am going to do each step step by step basically, so you can follow along with your instructions and have me as backup. So let me tell you a little bit about the dress. It is an intermediate sewing level. Not because it's got lots of really fiddly things, it just has a lot of steps and they need to be followed kind of methodically, and they build on each other. So it looks like a simple shape, but it's not really the sort of dress that you want to bang out the night before you go on holiday, unfortunately. It's got 3 strap options. So this is strap option A, fixed, plain, easy strap. Second strap option is an adjustable strap. So same width as this, but at the back you'll have like a D-ring and some sliders. And that's really great for giving it some extra flexibility. And then there's option 3, small spaghetti straps. And you tie them at the shoulder and they're really cute too. So yeah, that's that. Let's get started. Okay, so this is our back body. I've got a left and a right. I cut a pair of them, so I've got right sides together, and I'm going to sew a 1 centimeter seam, or a 3/8 of an inch, all the way from the top down to the bottom, and we're going to make sure we back tack at both ends. It's quite important because this piece is going to get handled quite a lot. Once you have sewn your center back seam, we can move on to step 2, which is the side gusset. That's this triangular piece here. Now, a gusset is going to come up here. We're going to open up our back, so we're looking at the right side. This is the good side. Okay, and you can see I've marked my notches here with pencil so that you can see them clearly. Pay close attention to these notches because the gusset is a triangle, but it's not identical in terms of there is a right and a wrong side. Okay, they're not symmetrical, so make sure you're going to match your notches here. So we're going to put them right sides together. Okay, and our 2 notches should meet here, and then you can see there's this little kind of corner here that should also match that corner there. All right, put them on top, and we can stick a pin in here. I always put my pins at a right angle, not this way, because if they go with the seam, they can move around. You want them to go across the seam so it holds your piece in place. And you'll notice here there's this little kind of pokey out bit. That top of the corner doesn't match with this, okay? It's this second corner here, and it's going to hit this edge here, and that's where you're going to start sewing from, because that should be a centimeter away from the edge. You're going to do a centimeter seam, back tack here, going to go across, back tack here. Now our centre back and our side gusset seams are complete. I'm just going to give it a quick press, and we want to press the seam allowance going into the gussets, not down onto the body. So I come in from both sides, and then I'm going to open the seam up just to set the stitches, get it nice and flat. Okay, and now I'm going to push my seam allowance up. There we are. And then we'll be able to overlock that. Now you can see I have overlocked my centre back and my side gusset seams. If you don't have an overlocker, you might have an overlocking stitch on your machine. If you don't, if you have a really no frills sort of machine, a zigzag stitch on your edges is totally fine. Also, pinking shears work really well, you know, so don't have to overlock, but anywhere where I say overlock, just use your chosen seam finish. Step 4 is going to be constructing your straps. Now in the instruction booklet there are 3 pages, 3 versions for step 4 because there's 3 different strap instructions. So choose whichever one you're making. I'm going to do one strap with on one side with strap A and I'll do the other side on strap B just so you can see 2 different types of straps. This is strap A. Okay, I have used it. I would recommend putting interfacing on strap A. I wouldn't bother with strap B or C. And we're going to fold it lengthways, right sides together. We'll put a pin or 2 in here. And we're going to sew a 1 centimetre seam along the cut edge, making sure that we back tack on both ends. This is our strap that has now been stitched with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam down here, and now we want to turn it through back to the right side. There are many different tools that you can buy specifically for this, and there are lots of different ways to do it. I just use a safety pin. So I'm going to pop my safety pin in here. I'm going to pop it down there inside. And sometimes it helps if you kind of encourage the bulky bit where the seam is to kind of follow through behind it, and then just push the safety pin through and then gently pull back the other bits. Can take a wee while to get it going at first. A little fiddly. Once the end is really inside there, then it's quite quick. Generally, the bigger a safety pin is, the stronger it is. So if you have a tiny little safety pin, it'll be quite fragile and it might break inside. So use the biggest safety pin you can fit inside your strap. There we go. Yeah, it's simple. We'll press that. So here is our strap turned through back to the right side. We're going to give it a press. It is a bit easier if you give it a quick press before you turn it right side out, but I forgot, so let's not worry about that. There we go, strap ready. Step 5 is going to be attaching your strap to the back bodice. You'll notice when you look at the strap that there's a flat side and a pointy side. Okay, one side says sew to back, the other side says sew to front. The pointy edge goes to the front. So we're going to take our strap, and there's 2 notches in here at the centre back. They're to meet our facing, so we're not going to worry about those, but these 2 notches here are for our strap placement, and our strap's going to go on the outside of that notch. So I've got my flat end of my strap, and one end is folded, the other end has a sewn seam. I'm going to put the folded edge of the flat end on the inside towards the middle. Now you might have, this gap here might look different depending on what size you're making. It's all going to sort of move around. but the straps are staying the same width. So we put this here, we'll put a pin on it, and we will stay stitch that in place. Our stay stitch line is going to be within that centimetre, so you don't want it to come, past. So make it 5-6 mils or 1/4 inch, something like that, across the top here. So strap, stay stitched securely in place. We'll do the same for the other strap. I'm putting the short end of strap B on here, so we'll stay stitch that in place. We have 2 back straps stay stitched in place, and now we're going to come and get our back facing to bag this edge out. Step 6 is our back neck facing, and it's this funny shaped piece here. It is quite a good place to put a label if you put labels in your garments. You could also put it under here because this edge is going to get folded under. So the first thing we're going to do is prepare this for putting on to the back, and we're going to turn this bottom edge up and press it in place by 1 centimetre. I'm going to turn our facing over so we're looking at the wrong side, and we are going to press the bottom edge up by 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. Okay. So really good press on that corner, and it will look a bit like that. Now our back facing is ready to stitch onto our back body. So for step 7, we're going to come back to our back body. Make sure you're looking at the right side, okay, not the wrong, the right side. Your straps are down, facing downwards towards the hem. Then we're going to get our pre-pressed back facing, back neck facing. I'm going to put them right sides together and just pop it on there. Should roughly meet. We'll put a few pins in it, and then we're going to sew a 1 centimetre seam all the way from here down to here, across and up. And we want to make sure that we are going to pivot in this corner so we get a nice straight edge when we're wearing it, so we kind of have square armholes. It's easier if we start from the wrong side actually. Okay, once it's all pinned on, we'll take it to the machine here, and we want to make sure that the stitch line here, when we do our seam, we're going to come down here and we're going to drop our needle very carefully right into that corner. And the same on this corner too. So with your back facing now stitched on, we are going to clip into these corners a little bit to remove some bulk, because we want to turn this over and it will get a bit chunky in here. Okay, so just a little wedge we're going to cut out of here. I'm going to do it to the top layer first, or the facing layer. Okay, so you want to get quite close to the stitch line, but don't, stay at least 1 millimetre away. Don't get too close. Then I'm going to cut through these layers here. Okay. Doesn't need to be perfect, it's just when this folds through it's going to push up, so you don't want that bulk. To the other side. You do want good sharp scissors for this. Got two little nicks here. Now we're going to push it over and we're going to understitch our facing. We want all the seam allowance to be under the facing. So this is going to feel flat and this is going to feel thick. And we want to stitch on the thick layer. We're understitching our facing. Okay, so all of the seam allowance is pushed through onto the side we're stitching on the facing. Okay, all up here. And we stitch sort of 1 to 2 mils away from that edge. And I just kind of pull my seams apart as I go. Once you've taken your facing off the machine, this is what your understitching should look like. The facing should just sort of fold down quite well. You can give it a little press. Make sure that these edges are nice and sharp. Do not be tempted to skip your understitching, okay? The reason, some people think it's like glorified top stitching, but it's not. Your understitching helps the facing roll to the inside so you don't see the sew-in line, and from the outside it just looks nice and clean. And it's always going to stay like that if it's understitched into place. We'll put some pins in our facing to hold it nicely in place. If you are doing a feature top stitch with like thicker top stitching thread, we'll just leave it at this stage with the pins in it, because it's a bit annoying having to do one step, change your thread, go backwards and forwards. But if you're just using the same thread all the way through, you can go ahead and stitch this facing down. And you can stitch it down from this side so you've got really good handling. Just start here, and that's going to secure your back facing in place. We will now move to the bottom of our back dress, and this is the hem facing we're going to stitch onto the bottom of our back hem. You can see it's curved, and at the bottom on one side there's 2 double notches. That's the bottom edge of the hem. And this top curve, we're going to fold this down by 1 centimetre, the same way we did with our neck facing. So we'll prep that first. What we're going to do is we're going to take our back hem facing on our back dress, right sides together, and we're going to match this short edge up on the side here. Put some pins in place. We want to make sure that this press seam is caught down. We want to keep that down, so we'll put our pin here and another pin here. Right, and we're going to take that to the machine and sew 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch down here. So the back facing has been, the short edge has been stitched 1 centimetre to the back of that dress, and we're going to come along to the other side of the facing, and I've done it over here too. You can see this side has also been stitched by the short edge, so it's kind of there's a bit of tension there, it doesn't sit flat. If you bring your double notches of your facing and your dress together, okay, let's put them here. Put some pins. Now remember, this is right side together. If you smooth this out along here, it's naturally going to force your side vents to fall where they should go. So we'll pin it along. So I've put some pins in this bottom edge of our facing. When you get to these sort of corners here, we want to push the seam open, and we're going to press the 1 centimetre edge of this facing, this side vent back, so it's going to match with this one here. And you can see that I have pushed the seam allowance open here, and it's pressed down in place, so it's 1 centimetre all the way up the side of that vent. And we're going to sew from one corner all the way across to the other corner, 1 centimetre, and there's one straight line along here. Now with your centimetre seam allowance, it should look something like this. You've got pressed edges of your facings and your hems in here. So this is a close-up of what it should look like so far. And I'm just going to clip these bottom corners quite close to the seam, but not entirely, and do the same on the other side. We are going to understitch this bottom hem seam, and it's kind of impossible to get right into these corners when you're understitching, so don't worry about that. Sort of just go as far as you can. If it's to here or to here, it depends on how thick your fabric is. Right, so understitching. Turn it back through now to the right side. There we go. So that's definitely going to need a press. As we're pressing our hem, we're going to press our vents, and we want to make sure we take the time to get this nicely pressed. At the top corner of your vent there should be a little drill hole, okay, that's marked on your pattern. If it's not there, theoretically what it's doing is it's showing you the intersection of 1 centimetre down here and 1 centimetre down here, and that's where your stitching is going to start when you sew your vents down. You can still see half of my drill hole here, and I actually want to cover it ever so slightly because I'm imagining that my needle is going to come down and I want it to drop into that spot, and I want that to catch under here too. I don't want my needle to be here and then the edge of my vent is not caught. So just ever so slightly over your drill hole and pin that into place. This depth here is secured and stitched down, so you've got no option to move this around, but just try and make it a smooth line from here, and then give this edge a really thorough press. With your bottom hem and your vents pinned into place, we're going to be ready to stitch them down. Just a couple little things to check before you stitch them down. Make sure you've poked the corners out nicely so they're square. And if you've got any little bits, so I can see a bit of my seam allowance sticking out here, I'm just going to trim that off. Okay. And I'm going to start from the inside, and I'm going to drop my needle right down on that drill hole there when I start stitching. And I'm going to come down here, drop my needle down, pivot, come all the way around, drop my needle down, pivot, come up and finish and back tack right on that little drill hole here. If you're doing feature top stitching and you need to do it from the right side, take your time. You could hand baste gently if you're worried that that's going to be difficult, and you might want to transfer a drill hole onto the right side if you're starting from the right side, so you know where to start and stop. Drop the needle down, lift the foot, pivot, Right, you can see that this is all nicely sewn down now. And I'll cut these threads here. Okay, so it should look something like this. Okay? Like that. This is the right side, and this is the wrong side in here. There's a lip there. Look at these nice chunky corners. Oof. And if you haven't top stitched your back facing down yet, do that also now. And then we'll move on to the front. So this is our wrong side. Notches from our darts here. I get the two notch ends, squeeze them together, and so I find my drill hole here. And so it's a nice, clean, folded line like that. Okay. So I'm going to put a pin. I'm going to put a pin in here. Okay, and I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to sew from here, back tack, and then I'm going to head right off to here and run off. Here we have our bust darts, and we're going to take it to the iron and press them down. Okay, so we have our little bust darts here. When I get to the end of mine, I just sew off the edge, and I'm just going to tie this in a knot. Bit fiddly. There we go. I don't back tack my darts. Now they look like tiny little pokey darts, but that is because this is just a half, like your side seam is really about here, okay? A normal dart would come all the way down here. Okay, I've moved to denim just because I think it's easier to see the wrong and right sides. This is the side seam of our dress here, and our two notches. This is our pocket bag, and you can see that I have marked in this rectangle here with a red pen. That's this rectangle here. Okay, I've just drawn it on. You can just sort of put drill holes into the corners and just mark those corners if you want. But if you mark it on in pen, it's impossible to go astray. And we're going to match up our notches here. Put a pin, another pin, and I'm going to take it to the machine. Now we're going to sew in our rectangle, making sure we pivot at the corners. I want to make sure I'm really on the corner there. Perfect. Okay, pivot. Pivot, drop it down, and a little back tack. Here we have our stitched rectangle, and we're going to clip diagonally into this corner here through both layers. You want to get quite close to the corner, but really don't touch that stitching, or otherwise it's all going to unravel. Okay. So now it's free. And we're going to take this edge here, that's now free, and we are going to put our finishing seams on it. So I'm going to take this to the overlocker. We are going to overlock in here between these clips. So if you lift your overlocking foot, so you can just slip it in under there, put my foot back down, and I'm going to lift that edge out of the way and slip it off. Okay. This is what it will look like with an overlocking stitch. You can just chop this off, or a zigzag. Okay, so this little seam here, done. We're then going to take the pocket bag and we're going to flip it off the side so that we're looking at the right side of the dress and the right side of the pocket. And we're going to edge stitch down where we have sewn. So we don't want to edge stitch past here. I will take a couple pins so I can see when I'm at the machine where to stop. I don't want to go right to the edge, just even back a little bit, about 5 mil. I'll put a pin here, and in this one too. Back a little bit from our corner. We just want to avoid the corner because it's we don't want to make it more delicate. Okay, we want to make sure that all of our seam allowance is pushed under here, and we're going to edge stitch from here to here. Here's the understitching. Okay, it should look something like this, not all the way to the edges. We need those to be able to move. Now we're going to take other pocket piece here, make sure right sides together, pop it on top, and we're going to pin it in place. You want to match it from this outer edge because here it's just flopping over the sides, but you'll see it should kind of meet up here, so put some pins in it. Okay, these corners meet. And once it's all pinned down, we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to sew a centimetre seam all the way around. Alternatively, you could French seam by putting these wrong sides together instead of right sides together. This is what our pocket looks like now with its stitch sewn around the edge. You can see when you look in here that it's folded a little bit until it pops out here at the corner. That's correct. Now we're going to overlock around the edge or do your zigzag stitch or your crimping or whatever. This is what it looks like with some overlocking on the edge. This is the front of our dress, and we're going to take our pocket and we're simply going to flip it underneath, and then we're going to poke out these little corners here and bring them up so everything's meeting, all these edges, we've got 3 edges here meeting on the sides. And here too. Should all be sitting nice and flat. Should look something like this. See these angles here, it doesn't matter if they're not perfectly 90 degrees because you're going to imagine when we sew our front body This is our front of our dress. When we sew it to the back, and get this here. Okay, you'd go right sides together, and we're going to sew a centimetre seam along here, and that's all going to get caught like that. So you won't see these angles. If they're like, see, mine are not beautifully 90 degrees. Doesn't matter, they're going to get all caught in a seam, and your pocket should be pretty much invisible. We'll put a pin here, pin here, and we're just going to do a little bit of stay stitching across here just to hold it in place. Here you can see I've done just a very small row of stay stitching, you know, 5 mil, quarter of an inch in from the edge, so that that seam's going to get hidden when we do our real side seam. Just, it keeps your pocket all in place. And this is what it looks like from the other side. All wrong sides here, wrong side. And then essentially you're going to stick your hand in here, and that's your pocket. It's done. It's now attached to your front. It's quite stable because it stays stitched on here, and we're just going to carry on and make the front. Just want to mention, if you're doing feature top stitching, this is a garment that I've made earlier. I would recommend, if you want to do top stitching visible on your pocket bag, bring your back piece. This is my back, this is the back gusset, and you want to just pin your side seam in place first, so that you can see exactly where your top stitching from your back gusset is and where it hits here. And this is my back gusset, this is my back body, and I would mark exactly where these two top stitching lines are going to hit on the seam, and I would draw in these stitch lines because of the angles that everything's on. Even if you perfectly do this same distance here, if you do it here, they're not going to match. So you're going to need to manually kind of adjust it and make it wider here, and then you can kind of taper off to make it the same all the way around. Once you've got both pockets in your front dress, we're going to move on to doing the hem of our front dress, and for that we'll go back to the steps that we did for our back hem, which is step 11. So we're going to press the top edge of our front hem facing down. Here I have my front hem facing, and the top edge is pressed inwards by 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. This is the right side of our front dress. We're going to get front hem facing. We're going to put them right sides together. And we come over to the side just like we did on our back hem, and we're going to sew down here. We're going to keep this top edge folded down, so we're going to catch it down with our stitch, and we're going to do a centimetre seam from the top to the bottom. This edge is stitched down, and now we're going to take the other side and we're going to bring it over here and stitch this one down with a centimetre seam as well. Once you've stitched both short edges of the front hem facing to the front, it should look something like this little tube here. We have notches at the centre of the dress body and at the centre of the facing, so we can line those up on top of each other. Okay, we'll put a pin in there. And then this should just sit nicely along here. Put a pin here and across here. And by putting this into place, it pulls these sides into position so they don't have anywhere else to go. Right, that looks good. We want to make sure, let's make sure our pocket's under there, that we have drill holes here, okay? So you should have 2 drill holes. One is the seam allowance intersection, and this other is where this is going to fold over to. The top drill hole is the first fold edge, like that. Okay, but we're not going to hard press these, just sort of pop them into position, and then we're going to press back this seam allowance. That's our first step. So this edge goes back by 1 centimetre. And I'm kind of catching that my drill hole's right here, so I'm shuffling that along just to check. And there we go there. At this stage you don't want to give this edge a hard press because it's inside out. So we're going to end up turning this back around and then your crease will be inside out. So don't worry about putting a big hard press on it. And this seam allowance is open, okay, here. We'll do the same on this side. Now there is a notch at the bottom, so hopefully where that's folded over it's hitting the notch. I don't know if you can see from this angle, but there's a bit of a wobble here, and I'm going to straighten that out now because once I come to top stitch that, it's going to be hard to correct here. You can see it juts out a little bit there, so I'm just going to press that back so I've got a nice clean edge. And the ruler is quite a good tool for that. Okay, that's better. When your hem is all pressed into place and your side vents have got their seam allowances pressed down into place, I've got a few pins there just to hold them in place. We're going to bag out the bottom edge of our facing, so that's just a 1 centimetre stitch all the way from this end, all the way around here and back tack here. Okay, now we've got our seam stitched here, the bottom 1 centimetre, 3/8 inch to bag out our hem facing. Give you a little close up here. Okay, should look something like this. Seam allowance opened up, stitched down, and now we are going to come and edge stitch on the top of our facing. We'll have to take that pin out. All along here, okay, onto the facing, catching the seam allowance along here. Right, so once the understitching is done on this bottom edge, we're going to turn it through. Just clip those corners first to get rid of some bulk. And we're going to turn it through so we're seeing the right side of our hems. So we're looking at the inside of our dress now with our hem pressed nicely into place and our side vents are nicely pressed down. We've given them a good hard press on this corner. Yeah, it should look something like this. don't get carried away and top stitch these edges down yet, okay? I know this was the stage we did it at the back, but on the front we're going to do it slightly differently. We are going to merge our front and backs together now, and this is the step where it can get a bit, there's quite a lot going on, right? So now I'm just turning it, this is my right side. Just turn it this way so it's a bit easier to see the whole front here. Okay, we've got a bust dart here. We've got the shadow. You can see our pocket in here. And then we've also got our vent under here. And we need to just sew our side seam, but we need to sort of, at the same time, with one step, we need to make sure that we are closing up our pocket and we're not straying onto here. And we also need to catch the top edge of our vent in. So I recommend you put your front body down like I've got, good side facing up. We're going to take the top corner of our vent and we're just going to unfold it a little. Okay, and we can't unfold it all because it's stitched down at the bottom, but just enough so that we can get this L shape. And you'll see here that my seam allowance is still pressed under, so it's the folded edge here that we're looking at. This is not the raw edge, this is the folded edge. This is raw edge, raw edge. And we're going to get our back body and we're going to put it right sides together on top. So this is my right side. Okay, and I'm going to get my vent, match them up, edge to edge on top of each other. Put a pin here. And then I'm going to slowly work my way up, matching my side seams. And there should be a notch on my back that should kind of match up here with the pocket opening. And it does. Put some pins here. And all the way along, and this seam here should hit my pocket opening there. Put a pin here. All the way up, and I can see that my facing is kind of sticking out a little bit. I'm going to just trim that off. So it's a nice continuous line. And there should be a notch up here just above your bust dart somewhere. And that's where the top of your back should go. If it's not quite hitting that notch, don't ease anything, just let it fall where it wants to go. Right, and then it's going to be, it's just simply a 1 centimeter seam from the top of this back piece down here, pivot in the corner, and then come across and back tack here. You can feel the thickness of this pocket here. Under here is the pocket, and we're going to sew a centimetre all along here, and we're hopefully just hitting our centimetre right on the edge of this pocket bag. And if it goes too far that way, we're going to close our pocket. Okay, so you could, some people like to pin their pocket back a little bit just to force this edge out of the way. I prefer to just kind of feel the thickness as I'm going. It's quite thick, so you should be able to sort of push down and see where your needle's going. And you will notice when this is all lined up along here that when this is flat, these angles don't really, even if we get the exact intersection of the corners here, they don't, this top angle is slightly different to that angle. That's okay, we just pivot them like this. Okay, they're like that so that the bottom hem kind of kicks open a bit. So we'll take it to the machine and we'll stitch from here down to here, drop our needle, pivot and go across here, or start here, pivot and come up to here. Back tag both ends. I now have my side seam at my machine and I'm going to start from this edge just because that's the way it will fit under the machine. When I do the other side seam, I'll probably start at the top. When it comes to this intersection here, right, I'm going to start at this edge and I'm going to come all the way here, and I want to drop my needle probably just on the edge of the fold line. It would be okay if it was just here, or even here to match your stitching. But I'm thinking about where my centimetre seam allowance coming up here is going to be. So to get a nice straight corner, I'm imagining my centimetre coming down here, and it's going to just drop right on this edge. Right, we'll put under the machine. I'm going to slowly wind right there. I'll lift my foot up, pivot around, drop my foot, and then continue on all the way down. Okay, this notch here indicates that my pocket opening is there. I can feel the thickness of my pocket, and I can run my finger along here and I can see the edge. So I'm just going to make sure that this line of stitching stays on this side of that crease line. So here is this, you know, I'm running my finger down the edge of that. That's where my pocket opening is. So I'm just going to make sure my needle drops on this edge along here. And I'm going to go slowly. You don't want to go too far this way, then you'll end up with a gap that you can see. You'll see where your pocket opening is. So you do want to get quite close. So just really pushing my fingernail in there just to kind of give me a guide. And so, and there, that's where it ends. Want to catch the seam allowance down. Make sure everything's lining up underneath. Make sure your dart is down, all nicely in position. Carry on. And I'm going to back tack here. Okay. Now, for the moment of truth, we'll take it to the table and see if we've caught our pocket. Okay, so we've taken this off the machine. We've back tacked here. This edge is gonna get bagged out with the front facing, so don't worry about how that finishes. Got a nice clean corner here, and let's open it up to the right sides. And here we go. You can see we've got our pocket here. Haven't caught that. Okay. If we check how it looks on the other side, like that, we've caught down this folded edge. You can see that's the drill hole I marked for my pattern. I've almost caught that there. Okay. And our dart is stitched down here too. So we will repeat this side seam on the other side. Once you've got both side seams stitched, we'll take it to the overlocker and we're just going to run it through on both sides. We're going to bring our side seams over to the overlocker or your zigzagging and lift the foot up and just slide it starting around here. When we overlock, this is our blade, this bit here. We just want to rub our edge up against that. We don't want to be cutting off the seam allowance. Okay, so we want our overlocking to be on this outside edge, not right up against here. We want to keep our seam allowance. Put down. Okay, it's really straightforward until you get to this corner, and we're not going to do any weird pivoty stuff. We're just going to gently pull it open and curve around that edge. Okay, so I'm just going to gently pull it back to sort of straighten this off. Okay, cut that off, just run it straight off the edge, and we've caught it in here. How it looks from the other side. Okay, you can see, got a nice corner here. Okay, again on the other side. Right. Just curves off. Okay. So we've got the side seams overlocked. Okay, both of them. We turn it right side out, so we're looking at the good side. I'm going to turn it over onto its front, so the front is lying down on the table. And that means I can see the back body here. Okay, and I'm going to lift the back hem up out of my way so that I'm looking at the inside of the front now. And that means, okay, we kept our lower hem pinned, and now we can pin our side vents all the way up. You want to jiggle it here so that it's folding right up to where you stitched before. We could even put a pin here just to make sure it's really secure and not wiggling. Okay. Pin the other side. Okay, this seam here is up. It is facing up. Okay, we're not catching it under here. And if I was to lift this out of the way, you would see the seam that so that's the end of our side seam here. Once your front vent and hems are pinned down, we're going to stitch them along this folded edge into place. And we'll start here. If you're using a feature like top stitching thread, you're going to have to do this from the outside. So you should have a drill hole here so you know where to start. Have a little feel around and make sure that that drill hole is in the right place. In theory, we want to start here. We're going to drop our needle down here. So I would just put a pin through here. And actually I can see that I'm a little slightly off my drill hole there. Ever so slightly. So I would put a mark in here so I know exactly where to stitch from the right side. But if you're just using regular thread and it's not a different weight or colour, you can stitch it from the inside. It's just, you know, easy to follow your lines. So we'll start here, go all the way around, and then we'll do this line here from the outside in a different step. Okay, front vents and hems stitched. How does it look from the right side? So let's turn it right side out and look at it from the front. Okay, should look something like this. Okay, we have our side seam here, and these are the nice chunky corners we've just stitched. And what we're going to do now is join this seam across here. So really what we're doing is just from the right side, this is the wrong side, this is inside, we are stitching down this little top edge of the vent because there's a hole in here. You could do it across here, but it's much neater if we do it from the right side because that's what's going to be seen. It feels fiddly because there's lots of layers here, but it is just a straight line. Drop your needle in at that point, back tack to the side seam, and make sure you catch that overlocking with this layer and this layer underneath it. Alright, we bring the top of our vent to the machine. Put your hand under here and make sure you've got 2 layers, but not all layers. You don't want to accidentally sew through the back. So feed it over your machine. Get it nice and flat. Okay, and just double check you've got the right layers under there. Okay, you should feel the top of your overlocking under here. when you're really sure, let's, when you're really sure everything's nice and flat, we're going to drop our needle down at this corner here. And we're going to sew a straight line to where I put this pin. That's where our vent starts to open. Okay, slow down, drop my needle there, and I'm going to back tack. Okay, so that's your vent done. Did the same on the other side. Okay, so when you lift it up, you can snip your threads here. Right, that's clean. This is inside, outside. Yeah, looks nice. And that is your front hems done. Now we're ready to attach our straps. So we're looking at the right side of the dress. This is the front. We can see this is our back here. We've got notches on the top edge of our front, and we're simply going to take our strap, make sure it's not twisted, straight up, and it will go here in between the notch and the outside edge. So we imagine it's going to get stitched on with seam allowance here, placing it to the inside, and we're going to put a pin in that. Okay, really simple. Double, triple check it's not twisted. If you're doing the spaghetti straps, move them quite close to the corner. The reason this notch is here is because we're going to sandwich this edge with the facing, and the seam allowance is going to come all the way up here. So it's giving us room for our seam allowance, but this strap is the corner of our front. So if you're doing really thin spaghetti straps, put them quite close to the corner, okay? About 1 centimetre away. Don't put them on that notch. If you're doing the adjustable straps, you'll have a long strap here, 2 raw edges. We want to take the sew-on edge, and that's going to go on the outside, and we're just going to place this here, like that, and it's just a simple stitch across the top for both of those. Okay, you know, 1/4 inch, a 6mm basting stitch just across the top to hold those in place while we put our facing on. Okay, strap sewn here. No twists. With the adjustable strap, you can put the D-ring and the sliders on later. You don't need to do that now. So I'm going to put this on the mannequin to check the strap length. I've just quickly slipped the dress onto the mannequin so that I can explain the things you want to check before you finish off your straps. So probably, if you're trying it on yourself, put on the sort of bra that you're likely to wear so you can check that it covers you at the back. If not, you could shorten your straps slightly to bring it up. There's a bust dart here. You hope that that's hitting somewhere around your actual bust point. If it's not, using the straps is a good way to lift or shorten it. A lot of my testers found the straps were quite long. I have an unusually long torso and long whatever this is. So the straps were short for me. So everybody's really different in this area. So checking your straps before you bag out the facings and put top stitching on is really, it's a really quick job, but it's worth your time. So just have a look and see if it feels good. If the armhole depth is okay, if they're just sliding around, you know, you could move them in a bit if you wanted to. Basically just make sure that they're comfortable. It's worth your time. And the last part of our dress is bagging out the front facing. Here we have our front facing. This is the right side, the wrong side, there's fusing on it. We're going to turn it over and we are going to press up this bottom edge. You can see that that little angle is the seam allowance there. It's 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. Okay. Now we're going to stitch this through eventually onto the right side of our garment, so we do want that line to be quite nice and straight because it is going to be visible, and I can see here just by putting a ruler here it's a bit wobbly, and then my stitching will be wobbly, so I'm just going to give it a better press to try and straighten those bits off. That's fine. That's better. Okay, and now we're going to take this and put it on our front neck. So we're going to put our front facing on. I think the easiest way to do this is to turn your dress inside out. So we're looking at the wrong sides here. And put your front body at the bottom facing up. So we're looking at the right side of our front. And that way you can make sure your straps are not getting tangled while you put them in there, because we're going to sandwich that top half of your straps in. Okay, if you've got the extendable straps, they're fine. So we're going to take our front facing, we're going to put them right sides to right sides, making sure that these straps are not kind of like at a funny angle. You can see that they come down slightly, but they're flat. So they did have an angle cut on the top so that they would sit like this. This ensures that they, when they flip over, they're on the angle with your natural shoulder line. So we're going to go right sides together, line that up there. Straps are flat underneath. And we're going to put a pin in here. We'll start in the middle to make sure it's centered. Work our way out. Now your front neckline has been worked a lot, like it's been with us the whole time we've been making this garment, so it's possible that it's frayed and it's stretched a little bit, and when I put my facing on top, which is fused, so that can't move out of shape, it's slightly bigger, possibly because we've overlocked and we've trimmed a little off these edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm really going to want to make sure that it's flat in the front, and put another pin here. We don't want to push these edges together and then have to do some easing here. Okay, it's better to make sure it's really flat at the front, because this is front center on your chest. It's the most visible part of the garment. So you don't want any bubbles. So let's pin this down here. pin my sides. And you'll notice that this back facing is folded under here. That's good. We want to catch that into one seam. So it's going to get sandwiched into our front facing. And then we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to stitch with the 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch allowance all the way around, pivoting at the corners. And we're going to make sure that this folded edge of the facing is caught down, so we're stitching over the fold. Okay, our facing is stitched on. Going to just clip these corners off. Yeah. Okay, and then we're going to turn it through. We'll turn it out, turn it out. There we go. This is our inside. Alright, now there's not much left to do except we're going to understitch on our front and the side here, and then we will top stitch this around. When it comes to understitching, it's pretty impossible to get into the corners. Don't worry about that. It's really just enough understitching to force this facing inside. So I'm probably going to understitch from here to here and here to here. We'll see what fits under my machine. It depends on what size you're making. So the understitching has been done on the sides here. Theoretically you would want to use a matching thread, but it is on the inside. The last thing to do is to stitch down the bottom edge of our facing. If you're using a decorative top stitch, you're going to need to do that from the good side, the right side. You make sure you heavily pin that, or I would even recommend a basting stitch would be quite nice. It is important that the stitch on the front looks good because it's right front and center of your garment. So before you do that, you want to check that your seam allowance has been pushed evenly under, like this line isn't too wonky. As long as it looks okay by eye, it will look okay by somebody else's eye too. No one's going to come up to your chest with a ruler. If you're just doing regular stitching, you can just come to the inside, back tack here, and then just follow along this edge and back tack here. If you want to do an extra row of top stitching that would follow around with this, so you we'll start here, you'd come across, and then you would just roll the garment around and do a row of stitching in here, all the way around until you get back to there. So think about that, either one row of top stitching on here or go all the way around. And if you're going to go all the way around, start on this corner. And if you have two fixed straps, make sure when you put it under the machine that this strap is behind your foot, not in front of your foot. Otherwise you're going to get tangled up. Okay, that's it. Technically you're done. Look at that, it's nice square lines, and your sides top stitch all the way around like that. Back looks nice there. If there are some other extra top stitching lines you can do if you'd like. I quite like to follow this bottom line, and I'll start here, drop my needle, I'll come out, you know, the width of this seam, pivot up here and follow it around down here like this. I'll show you on another one. Here you go, you can see that that's what I've done on my denim version. This is much bigger, this is an 18. So you can see where I restarted and stopped there. Probably should have started in, but the denim's very thick. Did a slightly better job here. Okay, dropped my needle in here, came up and around. Just because after it's been washed quite a few times, you start to get this sort of rippling like on jeans, which I quite like. And this is what I would call the sort of more minimal version. So yeah, if that's you finished, give it a press, and that's really exciting. If you've got adjustable straps, you have to stay and watch the last step for finishing those off. If you're adding adjustable straps, you're going to have some kind of D-ring here. Doesn't matter what shape it is, it could be square, a circle. And then on the other side, you're going to have some form of buckle or adjustable slider. So this middle bit doesn't need to move around, okay? It can be fixed like a belt buckle. As long as you've got three, I don't know, thingies. three bars. So you've got your top, your middle, and your bottom bar. And we take our strap, one end is attached to the front already, so don't get those confused. And then we're going to take our slider and we want to come in, we want to go over the middle bar and back out. Okay, just like that. So you're not seeing the middle bar from the good side. The middle bar is on the inside. Yep, and it should move up and down like that. If it's a little bit small, that's all right. If it's a little bit big, fine. Okay, so once you've got your slider on, we're going to come back to our D-ring here. Okay, and we want to go into the D-ring. We don't want to come under and through, we're going to poke it over. So we're hiding the ring and coming through underneath like that. Okay. Top strap goes over into the buckle, out underneath like that. And then we want to get this end in under here. Now that's obviously a bit awkward, but the easy way to do it is to just loosen this off. So pull that out a bit so you've got some room in here to wiggle around. Then I'm going to get the raw edge of my strap and I'm going to come in against the top and I'm going to go over that bar again. Okay, so it looks like basically you've got a loop within a loop. It's like a spiral. Okay, you come in here, go around and then around again. And this little raw edge here is going to be stitched inside. So I'm going to pull that a bit tighter. And this raw edge here is going to stitch down and hold on to this bar on the inside. Okay, so that the top can still move around. Now the thing is you want it to be quite close to this bar, but you need to be able to get that your machine foot under here, so it can't be right up here because it's just too awkward. You could swap to a zipper foot. Okay, so I'm going to fold under my raw edge. You could just overlock that might be the easiest way to do it, but I'm going to fold it under. I'm going to put it down here and I'm going to pin it in place And I'm just going to, that's not great. I'm going to double check with the pin in place that everything is correct. Okay, so here we go. That's my top loop and that's my other little loop on the inside. And you should be able to, yeah, look, move that short strap, long strap, well, long, short. Okay, so it's working. Essentially, you've got a big loop here. Now I'm going to take it off to the sewing machine. You can't undo it, so you've got to wiggle it around until you've got enough space to get this under a foot, machine foot. You can fit that under there? Yes, easy. All right. Make sure you give that a good back tap there because it's going to take a bit of stress. Okay, this row of stitching is essentially hidden. You're not ever going to really see it. Okay, here is your buckle. Yeah, easily adjust your strap length. And that is your beautiful pinafore done. Hope you enjoyed that. You know, it's a simple shape to wear, easy to wear, but it's quite an elevated garment in terms of the details, you know, with these beautiful chunky hems. Not the sort of thing you would get from a ready-to-wear dress. All the nice top stitching, the interesting seam lines. You got pockets. Yeah, beautiful dress. So give it a final press, and I hope you get a lot of wear out of your pinafore.